That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, I am very sorry, but I am not going to be live streaming tonight. I will be live streaming on Thursday night. Tonight, I am going to the opening night for the Tampa Bay Raptors. Yes, the Raptors are playing in Tampa this year due to COVID. But regardless, please make sure y'all go down there and DM me screenshots of your starting lineup. Reply to my newest tweet on Twitter with a screenshot of your starting lineup as well. That way I can try to make a few videos where I go through and I set your starting lineups for y'all. And as well, I'll be live streaming on Thursday night to try to answer as many of your questions and trying to get all of us that fantasy football title that we've been working all year for. But yeah, I just want to congratulate everyone, and I want to thank y'all personally for all the support that y'all showed in 2020. It has been absolutely ridiculous. All right, well, let's start this video and let's talk about 5 wide receivers that I want nowhere near my starting lineup in week 16. And let's start it off with someone who had a fantastic game this past week in Marvin Jones. Okay, so with Marvin Jones against the Tennessee Titans, I mean, he completely went off. 10 receptions, 112 yards, a touchdown off of 12 targets. Now here, a couple things. One, we know the Tennessee Titans defense is one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL. I know a lot of people don't want to accept that fact, but they really have no pass rush, and really, they just get carved up by opposing passing offenses every single week. This is why we've been trying to target this game in particular when we are choosing our wide receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks, because they generally give up a decent amount of points. And I know you don't necessarily think of the Tennessee Titans as a team that is going to get involved into shootout after shootout. But if you look at where Vegas has been lying their team totals, if you look at the over-under for the total points scored in every game for the Tennessee Titans, I mean, they are pretty much at the very top of the league every single week in terms of how many points should be scored in their matchups. So it was a dream spot for Marvin Jones. Well, now he is going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 16. And I know that Calvin Ridley just went off, but I promise y'all this. Calvin Ridley at this point of his NFL career is a far superior player over Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones is pretty much a jag that's stepping up into a wide receiver 1 role based on the Kenny Golladay injury. Really not someone that I want to get behind as a must-start wide receiver every single week. This is a very bad matchup. This Detroit Lions offense has been nothing close to what we thought it could have been with both Kenny Golladay and Matthew Stafford fully healthy. So in a bad offense, in a bad matchup, I think that Marvin Jones is not the player that we're wanting to start in Detroit. I'd be a lot more intrigued with a TJ Hawkinson or a DeAndre Swift, just someone that has a little bit more touchdown equity, someone that has a little bit more talent, and their touches can come with efficiency rather than them just having to live off of pure volume. In a tough matchup, that's something hard to rely on. I don't think anybody would be surprised if the Detroit Lions were limited to about 10 total points this game, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hold that time of possession very high. Okay, so now our next wide receiver is someone that's having a late season resurgence, and this is Hollywood Brown. I mean, in 2020, Hollywood Brown has had such an intriguing season based on his week 1 matchup against the Cleveland Browns, completely going off, where I wanted to say that Hollywood Brown was a must-start wide receiver every single week. We are looking at Lamar Jackson as a quarterback that had improved his deep ball. We were wrong about that. We are looking at Hollywood Brown as someone who gained 10 pounds of muscle while maintaining his quickness and his speed. We were wrong about that as well. I mean, Marvin Jones, I know, has been going out there and providing you consistent wide receiver 2 production over the past month. But here, what do I talk about all the time? We talk about chasing the volume and fading the efficiency. And here with Hollywood Brown, I mean, this is pretty much all off of efficiency. 6 receptions off of 7 targets this past week. And yes, the yards per target were very high. I mean, he almost cracked 100 yards off of only 7 targets. Now, that is something that we're going to be projecting week over week based on the fact that Hollywood Brown is that deep threat wide receiver for this offense. And we know if he's getting targeted, he is going to have a very, very high average depth of target. But beyond that, we know that the catch rate should regress, where he's not going to be seeing near as many receptions per his targets. So here, I think that we see Hollywood Brown regress. Also, this isn't the best matchup for him. So really, there are multiple reasons to be fading Hollywood Brown, despite him coming out here and looking like if he would have done this all season, he could have been a viable play for fantasy teams. But he's too volatile. The matchup is not good. And if you look at some of these games that he has been playing in as of late, I mean, he went up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Cleveland Browns in back-to-back weeks. We know both of those matchups are against teams with very bad defenses. And on top of that, we also understand that Hollywood Brown in that Cleveland Browns game actually committed some egregious drops and really just got lucky on one deep play to bring him that production. And while that's entirely possible with Hollywood Brown on a week-to-week basis, that's not something I'm going to feel comfortable about projecting. Okay, so now our next wide receiver that we're going to talk about is someone that I called a must-bench wide receiver this past week, and this is going to be Amari Cooper. Okay, so if I would have been told that the Dallas Cowboys were going to put up as many points as they did against the San Francisco 49ers, I'm going to be completely honest. I would have assumed that Amari Cooper came through with some production, that Amari Cooper at the very least was a wide receiver 2 for this Dallas Cowboys offense. But oh my God, it was bad. 2 receptions, a total of 3 yards because of his negative rush attempts off of only 3 targets. I mean, now we have him going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. We know the Eagles have had a decent defense so far this season, and it looks like this game could turn into a shootout unless we just see this offense crater, which I think is very likely to happen in week 16. And also knowing that even if this offense is able to go out there and aggressively push the ball down the field and do so efficiently, we still don't know if production's going to come alongside that, because with Amari Cooper, this looks like an option that Andy Dalton is not looking to every single time he drops back. You can't blame the guy with Michael Gallup as well as CeeDee Lamb as the other wide receivers in this offense, combined with the fact that Tony Pollard is seeing so many targets out of the backfield. I mean, Amari Cooper to me is a low floor, low ceiling wide receiver. Y'all know I love the player. I just don't think that we can be jamming him into our starting lineups. Okay. So now our next wide receiver, also coming off a very good game, but I really want to make sure that nobody's falling into that trap yet again. Jakobi Meyers. Okay, Jakobi Meyers is coming off a performance where he saw 7 receptions, 111 yards, and got some decent volume with 10 receptions. Now, obviously, Meyers was a productive player earlier on this season, and this is a wide receiver that there's some reason to get excited about him. I mean, really, there's nobody else to go to in this offense, combined with the fact that Jakobi Meyers looks like that breakout player. I mean, I think that he is here to stay in dynasty leagues. I think that he is going to be a key piece of this New England Patriots passing attack for years to come. I just don't think the volume is going to be there for the New England Patriots consistently. I really just want to be avoiding as many passing options that we can. And we've seen it before. Jakobi Meyers going out there and getting a very high workload, and then the very next game, him coming through with no production. So in your fantasy football championships, I think that Meyers is a player that has too low of a floor to count on, even though generally we are looking for that high ceiling. Okay, so now our last wide receiver we're going to talk about is someone that absolutely killed me this season, Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, with Juju, what are we seeing here? 3 receptions, 15 yards, 6 targets, and a fumble. I mean, Juju, everyone's calling him TikTok boy. And I will say this, in Dynasty Fantasy Football, this past offseason, I was so high on Juju. I mean, I was all in. I was calling him the wide receiver 1 of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I honestly thought that people who had Deontay Johnson as the wide receiver 1 for this team just did not know what they were talking about, even though a lot of people were coming out here and saying, oh, Juju's too concerned about his YouTube channel. He's too concerned about his Instagram. He's too concerned about TikTok to be able to go out there and continue to progress as a football player. My stance was, okay, Boomer. I mean, this is 2020. Juju Smith-Schuster can juggle all three. He's a great player. He has historic age-adjusted production. And honestly, I think the haters were right. I mean, with Juju, I think that we can safely say at this point that this social media usage, his personality off the field, is cutting into his real-life NFL talent to the point where it is a problem, and he is a player that I want to have on our benches going forward until we see something change from this Pittsburgh Steelers offense, until we see some mentality change for Juju Smith-Schuster. And yeah, I hate to sound like a 60-year-old man as a boomer saying this because I just made fun of people doing it about 3 months ago, but I was wrong. Y'all were right, and end of story. All right, now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, go down there, drop that like, leave that comment, subscribe to the channel. And also, I completely forgot to give y'all an accountability check. Y'all know I've been giving y'all updates on my own fantasy football portfolio as we go through the season. Well, out of all of our leagues that were $60 to $200 buy-ins, we played in 15 leagues. We made the playoffs in 11, and we are in the fantasy football championships in 8 of them. Actually, I think we made the second round in 11. So something like that. Regardless, we are in 8 fantasy football championships out of the 15 highest stakes leagues that we are playing. And all of these leagues are 12 to 16 team leagues. So great season so far, but if it was not for Juju caring a little bit too much about TikTok, it would have been a lot better.